Okay. Hi, everyone. There has been so much that has happened, and we are here to give you a new perspective on the current events going on. In a series of events leading up to the culmination that is today, we have reached a point where enough is enough. On May 25th, George Floyd was unlawfully murdered by Officer Derek Chauvin, a cop who kneeled on Floyd for 10 minutes till he passed away. This has caused outrage and an upsurge in the Black Lives Matter movement in America, leading to protests across the country. And today we have Izzy, and she's here to explain her experiences of being at the protest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Izzy Mayaka. I am a junior at Wayzata High School in Plymouth, Minnesota, and I have been heavily participating in the protests that are going on in Minneapolis right now. It's about a 20-minute drive from where I live, so it's not too far, which kind of adds to the weight that is being felt within the community of color in Plymouth. So we're all, doing the best that we can to reach out and offer our support the way that it's, that it is able to be offered in this time. So yeah, thank you guys for having me. This is a great opportunity for educational purposes to inform people what's going on who don't live where I live. So yeah, I'm excited.
Of course.
So I guess our first question is, what made you join the protest?
What made me join the protests? I don't know if it's like this for other people, but when I see somebody who belongs to my race being affected, whether that's physically or emotionally or psychologically, anything like that, I feel very upset. I don't know if that's how it is for you guys. I don't know if that's how it is for anybody who's watching in the audience, but I just felt like it just made my heart drop to my stomach when I saw the video of George Floyd being murdered. I've always been an advocate for Black equality, Black rights ever since I was a kid. I remember in 6th grade talking about the murder of Freddie Gray and being really passionate about sharing my opinion and making sure people understood the reality of the situation and the fact that somebody was again unlawfully murdered by law enforcement. And also the fact that it happened so close to home. I mean, I live 15, 20 miles away from Minneapolis, and just to see on the news that a Minneapolis man had been murdered on the side of the road, really, I guess you could say it pushed my buttons. I was angry. I was in pain. I felt so much pain. There was so much emotion there. And it did end up driving me to Minneapolis to go support his family, to support all of the families who have lost members, all of the people who have lost friends, people who have lost lovers, fathers, mothers, daughters, sons, all of that. And to just pledge my support for this movement and stand in solidarity with them, because I know that the anguish that the Black community is feeling right now is absolutely excruciating. So I wanted to go out and be able to support them. And even beyond that, I wanted to go and show people that we can make change. There were so many people there. It was very empowering to see that there were so many people of all different races, of all different gender identities, religions, sizes, everything. Like, people were just there and they were supporting, and it was very beautiful to see. So yeah.
No, I definitely feel that because of like coronavirus, and I'm Chinese, so I definitely, like, not to the certain extent where you're coming from, but I've definitely felt that a lot this year. So, like, feeling pain for your community. And I think it's so great that your community came together like that. That's absolutely beautiful.
Yes. So our next question is, what made you join the protest? Where did you find out about the protests, and who did you go with?
I found out about the protests from the news. I was definitely watching the news a lot after I saw the video of Floyd's murder. I found out the morning after it happened. So it happened on Monday evening around, and I found out Tuesday morning. I was on a picnic on Monday, you know, on a social distancing picnic with my friends. It was a great time. And then I found out that another Black man had been murdered. So I found out from the news, and when did I go? It wasn't, I think it might have been Wednesday. So I went Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. That's when I've gone to Minneapolis to protest. And I went with my father. My dad, he is African. He immigrated here from Kenya. His name is George. So that's another reason, you know, like, I mean, that name is not too far away from my dad's. Just replaced Floyd with Mayaka, and there's my father laying on the ground, you know. But he went there with me to show me just the reality of what a protest is, because I'd never been to one before. In all the incidents that there has been police brutality cases, I think that I've been too young for him to explain to me exactly what was going on, and too naive and not understanding and not able to understand the reality that is police brutality. So I did go with my dad on Wednesday. On Thursday, I went there by myself, and I got lost in the city at about 10:30 at night. So then I got grounded. I got grounded, but my dad is still taking me to protests. I just can't go there by myself, obviously. But yeah, I've been going with my dad. My sister, she went to the one on Wednesday, and she got really, really upset. She's 15. And so she's still young, you know, she's still processing what's happened. So she got pretty upset. And my mom, she is pledging her full support, but she just doesn't like crowds that much. So it's been me and my dad going.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how did the police react near you, I guess? Because we've seen the media and we've seen social media.
Yeah. So for the first few protests that I went to, there was no police interaction. They were more focused on the more downtown area. So we've got different precincts in Minneapolis and St. Paul, which are the Twin Cities. So in St. Paul, there's been a lot of rioting. There's been a lot of looting. So the police have been definitely there. That's been one of their top priorities. And as you get closer to downtown, which is where, you know, you see all of the theaters and you see all of the mainstream things that people will gravitate towards, you'll see more police there, especially because after sundown, things get a little hectic. So it's more dangerous for people to be there, just because that's when the rioters will start to riot, right? And that's when the white supremacists will come out of the shadows and, you know, begin causing all of this mess that we're seeing. Yesterday was when I went to the protest, and there was a terrorist supposedly who ran over a bunch of protesters with a semi truck on one of our highways, 35W, which is not too far. It's about a 20-minute walk, maybe a half an hour walk from where we were gathering, which was 38th in Chicago. That's where we've made our little like hub. So we've got memorials for George Floyd. Somebody is watering the flowers. You know, we've got barbecue, we've got water, snacks, speakers, and things like that. Somebody runs up and is like, guys, a terrorist just ran over protesters with a semi truck. He was so distraught. And so we decided we're going to march down there. So we go down there, and you get to the highway. It's kind of like you have a bridge, and then the highway runs underneath it. And you can just see police officers lining up on both sides. And it's a very surreal thing to see, like that many officers there. It was just, there were a ton of officers. And so we get down to the highway, and the leader of our protest is like, we cannot be saying anything that is provocative towards these officers because they will not hesitate to shoot. We cannot do anything to provoke these officers because they will not hesitate to shoot. And it kind of looked like they were soldiers. They were, you know, all geared up. They had face coverings. They had just like these full body suits and everything. They were ready. we get down there and we get down on our knees and we put our hands up just to show that we're peaceful protesters, and we start moving towards them. And they were starting to fire off these like smoke bombs that sound eerily like gunshots. So it was scaring people and people were running off. And so then they started advancing on us. On one side, you could see like a group of officers, a line of officers kind of coming towards us because we had blocked off both sides of the freeway at this point. And so we decided this is going to get dangerous and we should leave. And what I'm assuming is that the officers followed us down the highway, up the grass to where the city was, and then tear gassed us. So that was my first encounter with officers. I don't know if it'll be my last, but yeah, they just kind of followed us and then tear gassed us, which was a little bit freaky.
Yeah.
That's a lot, especially for your first encounter.
Yeah, well, that's the reality of it, that I didn't even have it as bad as some people. Some people get shot with rubber bullets, some people get maced right in the face, some people are getting beat up by police officers. I mean, there's a lot that's happening, so I'm glad that didn't escalate to the point where that was starting to happen to people before we all left.
Right. And it sounds like everything you're doing is very peaceful. So I think that's something the media doesn't really capture, is that there is that essence that is peaceful and that not everyone is trying to start havoc and create a
One of the things that I had also witnessed was there, of course, there are people who want to go and cause damage, right? There are people who want to go and destroy because they're mad and they feel they're pained very deeply by this event.
Yeah.
But there are the rest of us, we tell them, no, we can't do that because that will beget violence and that will give them a reason to attack us. So there's this element where people are getting ahead of themselves and they want to go and they want to riot. And we say no, like there's an adamant, no, we cannot be doing that right now. Any leaders of the protest will stress that we need to be peaceful about this. Otherwise, that will give them a reason to shoot us, and that will give them a reason to mace us, and that will give them a reason to attack us and arrest us. So we can't be doing that. So that's another element that I don't think is portrayed by the media, because what we're seeing for the most part is the rioting and the looting that is happening. We're not seeing the peaceful protests, which a lot of people can attest to, especially in Minneapolis. I have a lot of friends who have been joining the protests. It may be at different times, it may be at different days, because they're going on all the time. But I have a lot of friends who can attest to this fact, that the protests are peaceful, and we stress that people stay peaceful. So
That's great. So can you describe how these protests made you feel, and what type of moments in these protests really impacted you the most?
These protests, it is unfortunate that they have to happen, for sure. I never want to be at a protest that is, sorry, my cat, she is being really irritating, so I'll just put it down. Anyways, I never want to be at a protest that is protesting ending death, unlawful death, wrongful death. But the way that these protests make me feel is very empowered, and the sense of community here we have in Minneapolis is just absolutely astonishing. We've got, as I mentioned before, people were barbecuing, people bring snacks, people bring supplies. We've got all these supply sites all over the city where you can go and you can donate food, you can donate necessities. We've got a lot of necessities like diapers, toilet paper, paper towels, non-perishable foods, and things that you can make easy meals with. A lot of my friends are putting their Venmos, on their Instagram stories and going out spending like $600 a day to go buy supplies and drop them off at these certain supply sites. I mean, supply sites are getting filled and having to say, we can't accept any more right now. Thank you. We can't accept any more right now. We've got the Minnesota Freedom Fund, which is basically helping protesters who've been arrested get out of jail. And I don't think that they are accepting donations right now. So just the sense of community in the fact that people are donating and shopping and providing resources and supplies for not only the protesters, but the people in the city who don't have a place to grocery shop anymore because their grocery stores have been destroyed. Just the way that people are coming from all different areas of the state. There are people who are coming from hours away. There are people who are coming from Iowa, which is below us. They're driving all the way from Iowa up to the Twin Cities to come and protest. It's just a very empowering thing. But there's also this ache that you feel. We have speakers who get up and talk about their experiences being Black in America. And we have people who have gotten up to speak about their loved ones that they've lost to police brutality. We had this one woman talk about how the father of her child was beaten to death by police officers and left in a trash can, in a dumpster. And the trash came and picked up the dumpster. They didn't know there was a body in it, and he came out on the flatbed with all the trash. And she said, I always say that they didn't throw him in a river. They didn't leave him in the woods. They left him in the trash. And that's what they think of our Black men. So the stories that they tell are absolutely heartbreaking. And it's really hard to save face there. It's really hard to not cry, but you have to be strong, and you have to make sure that the people who are antagonizing us and the people who are trying to find ways to bring this movement down can't see that we are letting what they have allowed the system to do to us hurt us. And we're going to get up and we're going to protest and we're going to make change. But the stories are very sad. But we do have like poetry, we have spoken word, we have songs, it's a great community building time. And I think that it's really important for the people who knew George Floyd, and the people who live in that part of Minneapolis, because it's not a nice neighborhood in the sense that people there don't feel safe. And whether that be from each other or whether that be from the police, which I think is more of the latter, people don't feel safe there. I always say that here in the suburbs, we can run to the cops. The cops are a sense of safety for us, and we know that they will come and they will help us. But in the city, it's a different story. Minneapolis is one of the worst cities to live as a Black American. There have been more than one cases of police brutality. If you remember Philando Castile, he lawfully had a weapon and he was still shot by the police. And there are countless others that just were not mentioned by the media and were covered up. So it's not a nice place to live if you are Black. But I think that it's just especially nice that people are coming forward and offering their support and their love to the people who are being most affected. So the people who are in this community, in this neighborhood in Minneapolis. So yeah, they make me feel empowered, but at the same time, it's just very sad when I come home and I have to reflect on the events that have happened, and just let the weight of what is happening right now sink in.
Wow. So. That's very moving, like what you just said.
Thank you. Telling it like it is.
I almost literally just teared up listening to you, so I can't even imagine what it feels like to be there. And I'm sorry that you have to go through it, but I'm happy that you can see some positivity throughout it.
Yeah. You have to find positivity in even the most dire of events. Otherwise, you won't be able to see a future. You have to be able to be positive even when people around you are dying, you have to be able to find that sense of security in the fact that you can still put on a smile. And I think that the people in Minneapolis, at our little gathering point, are making this something that we can do, because it's really hard to keep to save face during this time, especially since there's so much chaos going on. You need to be able to show that you are not being torn down, not yet, and you're not going to go down without a fight. And that is something that the people of Minneapolis are doing so well. And I'm so proud of everybody who's been going to the protests, that they can come home and they can advocate, and they can be strong voices in our community, and they can pledge their support without breaking down, as hard as it is to not do that. I mean, that woman who told her story about her kid's dad being murdered, she didn't cry. She didn't cry until the last part, where she was like, I prayed to God every day that something would happen. I prayed to God every day that we would, that this would be recognized. And I'm sorry that George had to lose his life, but my prayers have been answered. And now everybody knows everybody knows what injustice the Minneapolis Police Department has done to us. And now everybody knows. And I'm sorry that George had to lose his life. So, yeah. It's very moving. It's very moving.
So what is, I guess, the goal of this protest, or what is the message that you want the general public to hear?
I think that the message that we have is that the police department again and again has done us a great injustice, not just in Minnesota, but all over the United States. African Americans are living in fear of law enforcement, the exact force that is supposed to protect every single citizen, and that pledges to protect every single citizen in America. I think that that is the main message that we are trying to convey, and we're trying to make change. We're trying to incite change, and we're trying to get the attention of officials. We're trying to get the attention of people who have influence on not just a state scale or a county scale or a city scale, on a national scale. And it's going to be kind of hard considering the administration we're currently under, but I think that that's a big reason that riots are happening, is because people are not being heard, people are being ignored. And the rioting started, and Chauvin was charged, and he was taken into custody. So obviously our actions are showing people that we are not, we didn't come to play. Like, I hope that people know that that's not a joke, what we're advocating for. I think that that's the message that we're trying to get across, is that police need to be held accountable for their actions, because there are hundreds of people who have been killed by police officers, and that's just what we know. We don't know how many more there is, just because, we don't, it's hard to tell how many people have been victims of police brutality, because it's not shown in the media. We're just lucky that somebody caught this murder on camera, because if nobody did, this would have been lost, and we wouldn't be having this movement in the first place. And I think that this was the straw that broke the camel's back for many Black Americans, and for many people who are supporters of the Black Lives Matter movement, is the fact that we could see the life drain out of this man's eyes. We could see his face change, and we saw him die, right? And that is a very harrowing thing. And I think that the message that the Black Lives Matter movement in Minnesota is conveying is that we can't have this happen anymore. We need police to be held accountable for their actions, and we need them to protect us too. So obviously there's that element of, we want revenge for George's death, and that's what you see in the violence, in some of the violence. I feel as though a lot of it is kind of frustration that we are not being heard right now, and we need to be heard because this is our lives. These are, like, what we're fighting for is the right to live and not just survive in America, right? So I think that that's the main message that we're trying to get across here in Minneapolis.
Okay. What are the steps that we should take moving forward now that the protests have gotten the media's attention?
I always tell people, I've had a lot of people come to me, you know, text me, DM me, and say, like, hey, I'm seeing that you're advocating for equality, and I just admire what you're doing, first of all, and second of all, I just want to know what I can do to help. I've had, like, a lot of people ask me what they can do to stop being silent, especially living in the suburbs where people don't like to talk about these kinds of things because it makes them uncomfortable, right? And so what I just tell people is keep speaking about this and don't let this be forgotten, because the reality of it is, if we don't keep talking about this, people will not listen. We have to give people a reason to listen, and I think that reason to listen we just have to shove it in their ear holes, right? We just have to keep talking and talking and advocating and advocating. So I always I encourage people to speak up. I encourage people to educate themselves on the history of police brutality, just so they can see that this is not a joke and this is not just a one-time thing. I urge people to donate to different sites. I'm sure that we've been focusing, you know, locally in Minnesota on donation centers, but I'm sure that all around the country, people are accepting donation centers. I urge people to especially donate to small POC-owned businesses that may have been destroyed in the riots. We have one little sports bar that was destroyed in one of the riots, and he was a Black guy who owned the restaurant or the sports bar, and he was like, you guys destroyed my business. What are you, like, I'm very upset. You guys just destroyed my business. We started a GoFundMe for him to raise $100,000, and we raised 700 grand for this guy to rebuild his business and to start it up again. So I think that you should definitely do your research into where you can donate and where you can put your money and where you can drop off supplies, because I know that protesters all over the country are feeling what us Minnesotans are feeling, for sure. And another thing is, what was I gonna say? Shoot, what was I gonna say? I'll just say this. Pledge your support for the protesters. A lot of people have been maced. A lot of people have been arrested. A lot of people have been beaten up. A lot of people have been, you know, shot with rubber bullets and things like that. So just pledge your support for them and make sure that they know that you are standing in solidarity with them and you will help them if they ever need it, especially during this time. Check up on your friends of color. Check up on your Black friends who are feeling this right now, because they especially need that support, and they need to know that their friends who are not feeling the weight that they are feeling, that we are feeling, even though, you know, this is just a tragedy nationwide, and everybody who has a brain is understanding that this was a bad thing and is feeling bad, but just check up on your Black friends just to make sure that they're doing all right. Seeing people who look like you die on video is very traumatizing, and having, you know, conversations with them and just asking them how they're feeling and letting them know that you're there for them is also something that you could do that is really helpful. But what I most, you know, what I tell people the most is just keep speaking up, because every voice is heard, every voice is essential, every voice is important, and every voice is loud. So as long as you keep talking and as long as you keep advocating for justice and advocating for equality, your voice will be heard, because strength is in numbers. And to us as the upcoming generation, we need to make sure that we are putting ourselves on the map right now, because in a few years, this is going to be our world. This is going to be the world that we are going to be able to lead, and we are going to live in, and then we are going to raise our children in. And if we want this to be a good place for our peers to live in, for our future families to live in, we need to speak up. So that's what I like to tell people.
Yeah, that's awesome. The time might be coming to an end. I'm not too sure. We have one more question, but first off, I want to thank everyone for watching. And second off, I want to thank you for joining us. And I also wanted to remind everyone, change isn't seen instantly. It comes over time, and it comes through lots of education. So even on the smallest scale, if you want to open a book and read about it, or if you want to talk to others who are willing to have these conversations, join a forum, join anything, those are little ways you can help by educating yourself and others on these topics, as well as helping the protesters and working for this movement. So historically in America, all minority groups have been oppressed since the beginning of immigration here. However, over time, we've seen some groups that have created stigmas around their status, especially surrounding their race. So how should other people of color, specifically maybe Asians or other people who've been oppressed, but maybe not as much, how should they address their innate preconceptions surrounding Blacks? And what can we do to repair these relations between both communities so that we can kind of join and make a unified front so that we can help everyone?
I think what other people of color need to realize that in comparison to the oppression that Black people face on a daily basis, they have privilege, right? And if you can recognize that as a person of color, that you have privilege, then white people can definitely recognize that they have privilege, you know, because they are the majority in this country. They hold the most power. They know that they can walk outside and not fear for their lives. They can walk outside and not be afraid of being ridiculed just for what they look like. And I would assume that that is a problem in other communities of color, not just the Black community, but just all other people of color, I think, have experienced some sort of prejudice-based ridicule or insults that are thrown at you just because of what you look like. So I think that we need to recognize that other people of color do have privilege. Other people of color do have privilege over the Black community. And especially in this circumstance, other people of color know that they can go to the police for safety. And if they can understand that, then I think that that is their responsibility to advocate and to tell white people who don't think that privilege exists, that if they recognize that they have privilege, these white people who don't think that privilege is a thing can definitely understand where we're coming from. I think that it speaks volumes when a person of color recognizes that they are more accepted in society than another person of color. And I know that we have stigmatized our races. There are stereotypes that many people play to concerning all different races. And I'm not going to go into that because I don't want to bring that kind of air of negativity into this meeting. But I know that we're all aware that every race has a stereotype, and when you play to those stereotypes, it hurts everyone. It hurts not only you, but it also hurts the people around you. It hurts the people of your race. And, you don't have to intentionally play to stereotypes. Stereotypes were made because of people witnessing what a certain race is like, what people of a certain race are like. But if you are, playing to stereotypes or expecting all people of one race to act a certain way, you could not be more mistaken, first of all. That is a very ignorant thing to think. And I think that we need to break down those stereotypical barriers, because seeing people who conform to a certain racial stereotype kind of puts the imprint on you that all people are conforming to that certain stereotype, all people who belong to that race. And I'm not going to lie, I have had those kinds of prejudices, and it has taken me a very long time to learn that is the wrong thing. And so now I'm happy to say that I do not look at somebody who is a different race than me, and the first thing I think is like the stereotypical version of whatever race they belong to. But it has taken me a very long time, and I think that that's not only out of like ignorance and out of being young, but I think it's also out of fear. Just being an African American in society, I think that there's that component that I'm scared, that I was scared. I'm not going to say that I'm still, or that I'm no longer scared, but I think that, it's taken me a really long time to understand that not everybody belongs to the certain stereotype. And for those of you watching, I urge you to take a look at how you perceive different races to be, and even your own race. How do you perceive this race to be? And is it true? Is that a stereotype? Or is that something that you have just observed, I suppose? I think that we all need to take a look inside of ourselves at one point in our lives and realize that there is this thing called bias that we all have, right? And that could be towards anybody. That could be towards any group of people. And it takes a lot of energy, and it takes a lot of maturity to be able to look inside yourself and say, hey, I am stereotyping these people, and what can I do to change that? So yeah, stereotyping is a very dangerous thing. I think that it adds to racism in this country. Just because if you stereotype a race as violent, what are you going to do? You're going to be violent back. You know what I'm saying? So I think that that's something that we definitely need to eliminate, especially in this circumstance, especially when we all need to be fighting together, is to eliminate that stereotypical element of races. So
Yeah, that's wonderful. And that was very well said. And I don't think anyone could have put it better. And you're very eloquent.
thank you. I feel like I was getting a little bit ahead of myself. I tend to go off on tangents a lot. So sorry if that ever happened. I didn't mean it.
No, it was
what I said made sense.
Every single thing you said was extremely important. And I think especially as people who are not as personally affected, I think Kavi and I definitely, we saw the video, we're heartbroken, but also we can't feel the pain that you feel. We can sympathize with you, but we'll never be able to empathize. And so hearing what you have to say about this situation is extremely important for us to learn and to grow as people and to help you and your community.
And you know what I always say? We are fighting alongside each other. We're brothers and we're sisters, and we are all humans, and we all have souls, and we all have beating hearts. And as soon as you realize that that rhetoric is something that you need to fight the good fight, that we all are brothers and sisters, and we all fight together, and we can't let things like race and gender barriers affect the way that we take on this problem, it makes what you're doing so much more intimate, just to know that beyond race, we are all humans, and no human, whether you're black, white, green, blue, purple, no human deserves to feel the way Black people feel in America. No human deserves to be unlawfully murdered and not, and have no justice for that. No human deserves that. So what I like to pledge is that, people can be allies, yes, but they need to realize that they are fighting alongside of us. And so then they become one of us. So everybody who's fighting here is one of us. And you may not feel the pain that the Black community is feeling right now, but nevertheless, you're one of us because you are hurt, no doubt. This is something that has broken so many people, and that's why everybody's coming out and fighting. So you are my brothers and you are my sisters, and we will be able to conquer this together. And if we all think that we are family, then it'll all work out. I have faith that it'll all work out in the end. And we're going to make a big change this generation.
Yes, we will. And I think you are a great leading example of the change that can be made. So
thank you.
Thanks so thank you again for joining us, everyone. And we hope you enjoyed our discussion. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me or Izzy or Anna. And again, this is for our Double Roots blog, and we hope you continue this conversation on your own.